Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
For us, it's very important that the masks do stay on during class time.
About face. After pressure from teachers and parents, BC changes the rules on masks in schools. Also,
the sales will be 75% down, at least.
Season scuttled. Cruise ships ordered to stay away from BC ports until next year. And
evidence of the impacts of racism.
Unfair treatment. Why don't BC's Indigenous people have equal access to health care?
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. It's a subject that's been hotly debated since students returned to school back in September.
Now, after months of pressure from teachers and parents, BC is changing its policy on masks in schools.
But as Briar Stewart reports, the new rules don't apply to all students.
Really, what we know is setting the tone in the classroom and working with each individual student is what makes this an appropriate and a safe place.
Masks will now be mandatory for students 12 and older, but there are exceptions, and they're still only recommended for younger students. Health officials say young children don't get as sick if they catch COVID, nor spread it as much, and it can be hard for them to keep the masks on.
I know for a 5-year-old it might be tricky, but wearing them more often than not is still better than not wearing them all the time.
Some wanted the government to go further. Students in middle school and in high school in BC will have to wear masks when they're inside working with other students, but they won't have to wear them when they're at their desks. And that's something that other provinces like Quebec and Ontario have made mandatory. And in Ontario, elementary students also have to wear masks inside the classroom.
If them, why not us?
This Surrey High School already made masks mandatory, and this teacher wants the province to do more.
Density is not being addressed yet. Even ventilation issues still exist in some schools. So the announcement was good, but it still leaves a lot of holes that need to be filled in.
Because she says her school has already had around 30 COVID exposures, and each time a notice goes out, the anxiety rises for everyone. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Surrey.
Well, another blow to the tourism sector. This year's cruise ship season has been canceled.
Federal government is extending the rules barring ships in all Canadian ports until next February.
As Susanna De Silva reports, it's left some Vancouver businesses worrying they won't survive.
The merchandise here has never been so clean, with an abundance of time to stay on top of it.
The sales will be 75% down, at least. And we do have, sometimes we have one sale a day. Normally we'll have 30, 50 a day.
This shop has been in Gastown for more than 20 years, with tourists, especially those stepping off cruise ships at the terminal a few minutes away, being the biggest customers. And today's news is another blow.
We're not surprising for this situation. You don't want anything bad happening for the passengers, for the tourists. We know it's not the time yet. We understand, but we are sad.
The federal transport minister says the ban on ships until February of next year is necessary to protect the most vulnerable in the community and avoid overwhelming healthcare systems. But the economic blow will be widespread. It is estimated each ship brings in more than $3 million to the local economy, more than $2 billion overall.
From retail to attractions to tour bus companies to ferries to airlines to restaurants, the list goes on. There's quite an ecosystem built around the cruise economies.
The Tourism Industry Association of BC worries this news may lead to the end of some more businesses and is hoping for more financial support for the tourism sector and a long-term plan.
Let's put a plan in place and develop the criteria by which we can get people moving again and travel beginning to resume.
But in the meantime, businesses are focusing on what they can do.
Gastown has a very layered and dynamic community here, and I think that Vancouverites have a very unique opportunity to become tourists in their own city and see what our neighborhood has to offer.
We have online sales going much better than before. That's what we're working on now. And we have some local customers still supporting us.
She says they are determined to survive. but does worry the time and money may have run out for some of her neighbors. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC's long-term care homes have been ground zero for COVID outbreaks and deaths in our country.
But by digging deeper into the numbers, a CBC News investigation has found key differences based on who is running the facilities, especially right here in BC. As CBC data journalist Tara Carmen reports, information shows private for-profit operators have been hit harder than nonprofit or government-run homes.
Frank Rizzardo says keeping COVID-19 out of the seniors' residence he runs in Merritt, British Columbia, is a responsibility that weighs heavily.
It's somewhat stressful when you think that if the virus gets into a facility, we lose clients. They pass, and they don't pass of old age. They pass because a virus got in that could have been prevented.
But Rizzardo says he feels less equipped to do that because his care home is privately run. Because staff can only work in one facility, he's had to compete with health authorities able to offer better wages and benefits. Rizzardo also says health authorities have been better at getting infection control experts and protective equipment into the facilities they run directly, while private operators like him have had to scramble to find their own sources.
They proudly announce we have X number of millions of gloves and masks and et cetera. We aren't part of that supply.
Rizzardo's facility is COVID-free, but the challenges he faces could shed some light on why for-profit facilities in BC have been hit harder by the virus. A CBC analysis found for-profit seniors' homes are where nearly half BC's COVID-19 outbreaks have happened, but they represent just over a third of long-term care beds in the province. Isabel McKenzie is BC's seniors advocate. Her office found in a review last year that private facilities provide fewer hours of care per resident, and they tended to pay their staff less. She says factors other than ownership are also likely at play.
The question is, what is it about the owner, what are the practices that we need to change that are different in for-profit versus not-for-profit. Some of it will be related to the culture.
Rizzardo says he'd like to work with the provincial government to ensure that all facilities that care for seniors in British Columbia are equitably equipped to do so. Tara Carmen, CBC News, Vancouver.
Let's take a look at today's data from the BC government now, which sees our curve continue to trend downward. However, another 6 people have died from COVID-19, bringing the province's death toll to 1,240. 465 more cases have been confirmed in BC as our total approaches 70,000. Just under 4,500 cases are currently active. 257 people are in hospital. That's down 8% in a day. 76 of them are in critical or intensive care.
One of 2 men charged with killing an elderly woman in a home in Vancouver appeared in court today, and it turns out we've met him before.
Dan Burt joins us live with more. Dan, this is a story that a lot of people have been talking about. Who is this man and what happened in court today?
Yes, Sandy Jack Parisian appeared in court via video link wearing a light blue medical mask. It was hard to see him as the camera angle cut off his head. He's charged with manslaughter in the death of 78-year-old Usha Singh. And as you said, CBC News has spoken with a man who identified himself as Sandy Parisian before.
Have to leave their park, their home, what they're used to already.
We met Parisian in 2019 when he was living at a tent city in Oppenheimer Park. At the time, he and other campers were concerned the city was going to evict them. Now, police say they arrested Parisian on Tuesday near Strathcona Park, where another tent city has been established. They got a search warrant to search his tent and were met by several other upset campers. Parisian was wanted on an arrest warrant anyway for unrelated charges, including breaching probation. His co-accused, Pascal Jean-Claude Boutilette, is charged with second-degree murder in the death of Singh. Police claim 2 men posing as police officers got into her home early Sunday morning and then attacked her. She was found hours later and died on Tuesday. Boutilette was arrested near Main and Terminal. Court records show he was on probation. Boutilette appeared in court yesterday. He and Parisian will appear again in court on February 16th.
And Dan, these arrests have a city councillor speaking out?
Yes, Pete Fry, who has lived near Strathcona Park for decades, says he's angered to learn that one of the suspects in Singh's death was living at that park.
It will hasten the immediacy of having to exert more assertive control over the situation in the park and ensure that it.
Fry says the timeline to move people out of the park by April has not changed, though, and you can read much more on the story on our website, cbc.ca/BC. Anita, Mike?
All right, Dan Burrett reporting tonight. Thanks. And there have been 2 more deadly shootings in the Lower Mainland. They happened less than 12 hours apart. Just before 7:30 this morning, officers responded to reports of gunshots in North Surrey near 139 A Street and 108 Avenue. RCMP say a man and woman were found shot inside a home. The woman in her 20s died in hospital. Officers say the man in his 40s is expected to survive. Police believe it's a targeted shooting and there is no risk to the public.
We believe that this was not a random incident, and we're working to determine exactly what happened, who's involved.
And at about 8 o'clock last night, 32-year-old Chris Kenworthy was found dead inside a car. He'd been shot near Burn Creek Ravine Park in Burnaby.
He was, how we say, known to police. He did have police interactions, and we believe that this was a targeted incident. He was targeted for murder.
Investigators say they don't know if the 2 shootings are related and are trying to figure out whether either shooting is gang-related.
A terrible accident today has left a 50-year-old man dead. He was the driver of a milk truck, and his vehicle rolled into a townhouse carport in Vancouver. First responders got to the incident around 10 a.m. at Nanaimo and Southeast Marine Drive alongside the BC Coroner Service. WorkSafe BC is also part of the investigation. WorkSafe says it is trying to figure out what caused the accident and look at any contributing factors so similar incidents can be prevented in the future. That's all the details we have on this tonight. Hoping to have more, and we will update you tomorrow. Well, some troubling findings that show Indigenous people here in BC are more likely to end up in our province's emergency rooms.
Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond finds that the provincial healthcare system discriminates against the First Nations community, and as a result, they lack primary medical care. Our Mira Baines joins us now live tonight with more on this. So, Mira, tell us more about these findings.
Well, Mike, former Judge Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond was appointed to take a look and review allegations of anti-Indigenous racism in the healthcare system. Now, she found that Indigenous people don't have equal access to healthcare, such as primary healthcare and preventative healthcare. Many lack family doctors, and they end up in emergency rooms like the one behind me. Turpel-Lafond was appointed last June to look into allegations of anti-Indigenous racism in emergency rooms. There were allegations that hospital emergency staff were playing a game where they would guess the blood alcohol level of First Nations patients. Now, those allegations weren't substantiated, but they did find that there was widespread racism. Lafond unveiled hard data today showing that many Indigenous patients lack primary care.
Healthcare system in BC is a much different experience if you're an Indigenous person than if you're a non-Indigenous person. Indigenous people have inequitable access to primary and preventative healthcare services, which perpetuates and cascades into poor health outcomes all across the lifespan.
A survey also found that 23% of Indigenous respondents felt that they always received poorer service than others. 24% felt that they were treated as being dishonest, and 26% of Indigenous respondents said that they felt that as though they were being treated as they were drunk or abusing substances, and 14% felt that they were being treated like bad parents. And those are just some examples of the data that was collected.
Okay, Mira, so what has been the government's response to these new findings?
Well, Health Minister Adrian Dix was also at that news conference, and he also spoke about some of the review's findings. And he said that he was going to establish a task force that would be implementing some of the recommendations that were made by Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafond in this review. And he also said that changes are coming and that immediate action would be taken.
We have asked every health authority, and they are on their way, to put in place an action plan towards the goal of advancing their organizations to be culturally safe spaces. Medical bylaws are under review by the ministry to ensure consistent standards for cultural safety and humility as an expectation of medical staff privileges.
Turpel Lafond also said that there should be an Indigenous health representative that should be appointed to take in complaints and also respond to some of these allegations that are being made.
Mira Baines reporting live for us tonight. Thanks, Mira. Well, Skip the Dishes has added a BC fee to its delivery orders in this province. Skip the Dishes users were greeted by a pop-up on the app today notifying of the additional 99-cent fee for orders. The move comes in response to the BC provincial government's 15% cap on the amount that food delivery companies can charge restaurants. This cap aims to relieve local restaurants from the effects of COVID-19, in which delivery fees had previously been as high as 30%. NDP MLA Ravi Killeen says he's disappointed at Skip the Dishes' decision.
We know that people are trying to keep themselves safe, their community safe, and they're going to online ordering. And and we know these companies are making huge profits right now. And for them to do this at this time is, I think, really bad faith.
Killeen says the Solicitor General will further review the situation before providing an update on how the government will respond to Skip the Dishes.
Well, if you're a bike owner in Vancouver, you are likely familiar with this problem.
The city continues to have the highest rate of bike thefts per capita of any other major Canadian city. Experts say our temperate climate and bike culture are contributing factors.
As Joel Ballard with CBC Vancouver's Impact Unit reports, despite efforts to curb the crime, bike thieves are thriving.
We're lucky that we have a spot because we have our own designated place to park our bike.
Laura Forte always made sure that her and her partner's bikes were locked to the wall of their secured parking garage. But last weekend, the bikes were stolen.
I'm quite shocked it was taken from right under my nose, basically.
Thieves cut through the bars during the night and made off with the bicycles, which Forte says valued around $1,300. A common problem in Vancouver. Last year, 2,115 bicycles were reported stolen to the Vancouver police. That means 334 bicycles were stolen for every 100,000 people.
It takes time to find a bike you really like, and just to have that taken away from you, yeah, it's frustrating and sad.
And while the current numbers are shocking, it used to be even worse.
We're just about 40% down from our 2015 numbers.
So why are Vancouver's numbers still so high? Well, experts say it's a combination of year-round cycling weather, an influx of new riders during the pandemic, a healthy biking culture, and owners who don't take the necessary precautions, meaning bikes are prime for picking.
The majority of stolen bikes end up on online marketplaces, right? Facebook, Craigslist, OfferUp, all of them.
And he says the cases are extremely difficult to solve. Bicycles are one of the only modes of transportation without vehicle identification numbers, which allow police to match the stolen property to its owner.
How do you prove something belongs to somebody if they have no proof of ownership?
So Brunt encourages cyclists to register their bike serial numbers in the free Project 529 app. And if it's stolen, file a report with the police and they can identify the bike. Otherwise, police are limited in what they can do.
We have to work in the guidelines of the law. You just can't walk up to somebody and go, my spidey sense says, yeah, that's a stolen bike.
During the summer, Brunt says most bikes are stolen from the street. But as the weather turns, the theft moves indoors. Forte knows that all too well.
So what is the next option? Like, you don't have a bike, or you just resort to the fact that it'll probably get stolen, so you just have a crappy bike?
She says she will buy a new bike, and when she does, she plans to register its serial number. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, a staggering number of illegal crab traps have been pulled out of Boundary Bay, potentially saving thousands of crabs from going on sale on the black market. The Coast Guard and Fisheries and Oceans Canada took almost 340 traps out of the water. The total is more than 100 traps more than any previous year of the annual operation. The commercial crab fishery closed in November. The DFO says the traps are a major conservation concern by taking undersized crabs of females that haven't reproduced. DFO officers are now investigating the gear, trying to figure out who did this, and they say charges may follow.
Johanna Wagstaffe now, our first check of the forecast. Well, that was more like it today. Joe, enough of that pesky sunshine from yesterday. Back to the kind of stuff we know, the showers and clouds.
Yeah, you're right. That was way too much sun and blue sky and crisp views for any of us yesterday. Yes, this is what we know and love. We've got quite a bit of rain. I've just checked my handy rain gauge. And here up here in Lynn Valley, 45 millimeters just since 2 p.m. this afternoon. So it's coming down heavy at times. Here's what it looks like on the radar. Still seeing that surge of moisture move across Metro Vancouver. It is beginning to taper, though. In the next couple of hours, we'll see the steady rain give way to showers and even drizzle by the time we hit Friday morning. Tapering or lowering impacts of the rain. There's the big picture. We're still getting that northwesterly flow that's bringing that low pressure system down along the coast. It will eventually track through BC and hop over the Rockies, but we're not done with the rain yet. So I mentioned the drizzle, tapering to showers through the overnight. I think Friday likely starting off with some drizzle, but look at that. Some clearing skies as well. There will be moisture left over. I think it's one of those days where we could see some cumulus towards the North Shore. Mix a sun and cloud day, not an all blue sky one. So don't worry, you won't get it for too long if you were hoping for more rain. And as we head into the weekend, I do have something for everyone as well. Those details coming up.
Well, Mike and I tend to fight on what we actually want in the weather, so this is perfect.
That's not
something
fighting.
for everyone.
They're heated discussions, not fighting.
Debates.
Yes. Thanks, Johanna. And a reminder, you can also watch our newscast live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver, also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Fresh concerns over Canada's vaccine supply are surfacing. Now, the other major supplier of doses is telling Ottawa to expect fewer shipments, and they won't say why. We'll see what kind of delays to expect next.
.621, thanks for staying with us online during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Musician Adrian Sutherland hasn't been able to leave his community in Northern Ontario for months.
But that hasn't stopped him from putting out a new song and a new music video. As Marjorie Dowhouse shows us, he did it with the help of a crew in Manitoba.
COVID-19 has had a big impact on musicians like Adrian Sutherland. His new music video for his single Respect the Gift is out. Cree artist from Attawapiskat in Northern Ontario had to get creative to make that happen.
I would have loved to come down to Winnipeg or Manitoba, and actually I was begging to be one of the dancers in the video.
Instead, Sutherland used his connections in Winnipeg to get the video done. An open call for performers led to the selection of 5 local dancers featured in the video. It was all shot at the Chroma Ranch near Ile de Chêne. The facility features the largest green screen in North America. It has been used as the backdrop for many film productions. And the finished product? Sutherland says it was a cross-Canada production with dancers from Winnipeg, a production crew from Manitoba, and the video edited in Toronto, all while he remained in Attawapiskat. The longtime musician says he's in awe of how it all turned out.
I mean, I keep watching it at least 2-3 times a day. I've already seen it many times prior to it being finished. And the final piece is just really just comes to life, especially some of the design work we're seeing in there.
The music video is also a big leap for Sutherland, who is best known as the frontman for roots rocker band Midnight Shine. His latest solo endeavor into dance music is a major shift for him.
I must admit, it was different than anything I've done to date. It was hard for me to really get behind the song when it was first introduced to me, the idea, anyway, when it was in the idea concept. Anyway, it quickly grew on me. I really liked the funky guitar riffs in there, and it's just a real driving beat behind it all.
Sutherland says COVID-19 forced him to stop touring and pivot to virtual connections. The father and grandfather says he hasn't been able to leave Attawapiskat for a year. He says that time isolating hasn't stopped him from continuing to make music. It's also led to an appreciation for what's around him.
We don't feel like we're in a vulnerable position. We feel healthy, we feel strong. We've been eating strictly from the land. We've been doing what we've been doing for as long as I can remember.
Respect the Gift is Adrian Sutherland's second solo single and has been getting airtime on CBC Radio 1 and Hockey Night in Canada. Marjorie Dowhouse, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, there's good news and bad news about COVID-19 vaccines coming to Canada.
While one supplier is getting back on track, the other says it won't be able to meet its immediate commitments.
As David Cochrane tells us, the Liberal government is coming under fire for a plan that could reduce the number of doses going to poorer countries.
After weeks of drastically reduced deliveries of the Pfizer vaccine, finally some good news.
They're forecasting shipments of at least 335,000 doses the week of February 15 and 395,000 the last week of February.
But that good news quickly offset by more bad. Moderna will likely reduce its next delivery from the scheduled 250,000 doses as it struggles to meet global demand.
So at this time, I can't really tell you what the quantity will be, but we do not expect to receive 249,000 at this time.
So the vaccine roller coaster continues, with the government under pressure for not having enough.
We are failing right now. So Mr. Trudeau, show us the plan for these doses you've promised.
While also being criticized for taking too much.
Learning that Canada is the only country in the G7 that is going to access COVAX.
COVAX is a global effort to encourage wealthy countries to buy vaccines for poorer ones. The incentive is the wealthy country gets a vaccine dose for every dose it donates.
COVAX has always been part of Canada's procurement strategy.
Canada is one of COVAX's biggest contributors at more than $400 million, but it's opted to take its doses as soon as possible while other wealthy countries wait.
Our government will never apologize for doing everything in our power to get Canadians vaccinated as quickly as possible.
The criticism is that Canada should leave those doses for low-income countries. The urgency is that Canada's vaccine supply has been inconsistent. In the weeks that Pfizer and Moderna shipments have been reduced, Canada has dropped on the global vaccination charts from number 10 down to number 33. David Cochrane, CBC News, Ottawa.
Meantime, the number of COVID-19 cases has dropped significantly in Canada's Indigenous communities. There are fewer than 1,900 active cases right now. That is the lowest number since early December. But the Indigenous Services Minister says there's still resistance to the Indigenous vaccination program.
We've already seen instances in the media of racism related to the vaccine rollout, where some individuals have questioned why Indigenous peoples are prioritized. As I've spoken to this before, the decision to prioritize Indigenous people living in remote communities, but also in other parts of the country, including those living in urban settings, is based on science. It's not a matter of politics or opinion.
More than 300 First Nations and Inuit communities have vaccinations underway, with more than 64,000 doses already administered. 75 new clinics are expected to open across the country in the coming weeks. Well, air purifiers like hand sanitizer, gloves, and masks before them are having a bit of a COVID moment.
So our colleagues at CBC Marketplace started asking questions about how well they actually work. Here's Neil Coxall putting some of the world's biggest brands to the test.
Bernadette Liu-Kisong spends hours every day in here.
Because I'm working from home, the room where I'm working in is small.
What are you worried about?
How it will affect us in the long term.
It is a scene playing out in homes all across the country.
Okay, so if we could see what was in this air at a microscopic level, we would see all kinds of things. It's a chemical soup.
Dog dander, human skin cells, cloth fibers, and mold are just some of what's floating around. Portable air purifiers are supposed to help get rid of all of that. But can they also help keep the coronavirus out?
So the short answer is yes, they can get rid of the virus.
A purifier, though, cannot replace masks, hand washing, and physical distancing. Jeff Siegel is an expert on indoor air. He and his team at the University of Toronto tested 5 brands for us, 3 of the same model for each of them. All have HEPA filters. The tests will measure the clean air delivery rate, or CADR, of each device. Airflow and efficiency are key. We're not specifically testing for coronavirus particles here, but we are using incense smoke to see how the purifiers perform. The Dyson Pure Hot and Cool is the most expensive purifier we're testing. In the end, it was one of the worst in terms of performance in our test. Siegel says the magic number for cleaning a small to medium-sized room is 200 to 300 cubic meters per hour. The Dysons in our test had an average CADR of about 140 cubic meters per hour. So we took our results and our questions to Dyson headquarters in the UK.
We're packing a lot of technology into what is a relatively small footprint.
In this case, the company says a heater, fan, and air purifier.
Why do you think people should spend $800 on a product when there are cheaper products that clean the air better on the market?
I think cleaning the air better is probably needs a more holistic view rather than only looking at the CADR metric. Obviously, CADR is an important part of purification, but we need that product to sense, to capture and project.
But experts tell us CADR is the international industry standard and the most important metric. Neil Kirksall, CBC News, Toronto.
In Montreal, there are questions about why a routine traffic stop led to a man being arrested and charged with attempted murder, only to be abruptly released 6 days later.
Sarah Levitt walks us through how the incident unfolded and a growing call for answers into how it was handled.
A man was wrongly arrested, accused, detained. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Outrage from Montreal's mayor echoes anger from many today. Stopped by police for using his cell phone while driving last Thursday, Mamadi Camara just happened to be there as the officer who pulled him over was assaulted and stripped of his weapon. When Camara tried to help by calling 911, he soon found himself arrested, charged with attempted murder and more. After being held in custody for 6 days yesterday, a shocking reversal. All charges against him stayed.
It's a very exceptional situation. We don't see that often, and we hope not to see that because what happened yesterday just proved that there was a mistake done.
Montreal police aren't calling it a mistake, but are saying more evidence came to light, including additional analysis of traffic camera footage, which showed another person at the crime scene, and witnesses came forward. Now there are calls for an independent inquiry. Quebec's public security minister tweeted, "The circumstances that led to the indictment of Mr. Mamadi Farah Camara must be examined." Police, though, say the investigation is still underway, and for now, Camara is considered an important witness.
We're ready to apologize to Mr. Camara once we have all the facts. As I stated before, we're still waiting for some results to come in.
The police chief says race did not play a role in Camara's arrest.
You know, the relationship between the SPVM and the Black community is very fragile. So I think some type of apology or acknowledgement of the concern of the Black community would have been appropriate.
Camara is not talking. He didn't spend last night at home. Sources tell Radio-Canada his home was damaged by police searching for the officer's missing gun. Camara's lawyer says he's considering his next steps. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Well, 5 years ago, when Kevin Desmond started his tenure as CEO of TransLink, the early edition Stephen Quinn met him to ride a bus together. This week, since Desmond is leaving, they met up again for a socially distanced and safe send-off. what he thinks of his legacy coming up.
To most Canadians, it's the start of the famous and romanticized Alaska Highway. Mile zero in the heart of Dawson Creek, BC's only true prairie farming center. It's a city that was built on grain, but a city that now hopes to cash in on coal. With the signing of coal export contracts, the BC government predicts that this Peace River region will grow by 20,000 people within a few years. The coal mines themselves will actually be located 150 kilometers south of here, but the communities of Chedwind and Dawson Creek believe they'll attract many of the newcomers. Dawson Creek itself forecasts it will grow from 14,000 to 19,000 people in only 3 years. In the past 3 years, speculators have driven land prices up tenfold. They're gambling that Dawson Creek will attract most of the new workers for the coal fields. Half-empty apartments await the influx of people.
It started about 2 years ago. There was a lot of speculation waiting on this coal, and there was apartments built, and people were getting ready for it. And unfortunately, the coal didn't come as early as a lot of people figured it would, but it wasn't good for the investors at that time, but it is now because they're able and ready and willing, and they can stand an influx of people.
The city has attempted to discourage speculation with policies of its own. Alderman Peter Diemert.
Our city has a fairly large land bank, so we've been able to maintain the price of our land down. So we have quite a few lots available, and we have a couple of large acreages that will be developed into industrial park sites and be able to hold the price of land down, hopefully.
Both Diemert and Sawchuk say it makes more sense to absorb the new workers in existing communities rather than build a new town at a taxpayer cost of $100 million.
There hasn't been any instant town that's been a success. The morales are bad, the drinking problems, you know, they don't have the services to provide, such as skiing and, you know, the the swimming pools, libraries, and all this type of stuff.
100 kilometers west of Dawson is Chedwind, a village where speculation is feverish and prices have doubled in 18 months. About 30% of the surrounding land is now owned by West Germans, and realtors are getting daily inquiries from as far away as Europe and the Mideast.
The interest is, I think, bringing them in here is the political unrest in Europe and probably in the oil-producing countries, and they're just very apprehensive. Any I've talked to, that has been the situation primarily.
How much of an increase in real estate values are you looking at, say, in the next year here?
I would hate to be committed as saying that they're going to go to such a factor, but I think you are going to find that there will be at least a 30% increase.
Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's better. It's helping the community and stuff. It's making everything in the school safer and stuff, which is helpful.
An about-face on masks in schools from the BC government. It's now mandatory for students in middle and secondary schools to wear non-medical masks in all indoor areas. Masks can come off while students are at their workstations in the classroom. Staff at elementary schools are included in the new rules, but elementary students are not.
And we do have, sometimes we have one sale a day. Normally we will have 30, 50 a day.
A shock for BC businesses as the ban on cruise ships coming to Canada will remain in place until February of next year. Vessels under 100 people will still be allowed to dock, as will ferries and water taxis. The government is also urging Canadians to avoid travel on cruises that leave from countries that do still allow them.
Indigenous people have inequitable access to primary and preventative healthcare services, which perpetuates and cascades into poor health outcomes all across the lifespan.
First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in our province don't have equal access to medical care in our province. That's according to a new report on anti-Indigenous racism. The data shows Indigenous patients are 75% more likely to visit the ER than anyone else in BC. All of this means they are ending up in poorer health than the rest of the population. The report says BC needs to rebuild its healthcare system to one that does not have racism entrenched in it.
And the BC government has started clearing the way to build a SkyTrain extension down one of Vancouver's busiest transit corridors. Demolition underway for the Broadway subway project. Construction started by demolishing buildings at Broadway and Main Street. This is to make room for the future Mount Pleasant station, the first of 6 stations planned for the tunneled extension from VCC Clark to Arbutus. Budgeted at $2.83 million, demolitions are expected to finish by the end of April, with the overall project slated for completion by 2025. The government says there will be minimal impact on traffic, but street parking will be limited.
And the man behind that SkyTrain extension won't be around to see it through.
It's rare to have your CEO leave with a marquee project in the works, but that's where TransLink finds itself as it looks to a future without Kevin Desmond.
The host of the CBC's Early Edition, Stephen Quinn, took a ride with Desmond to get his thoughts on leaving TransLink at this uncertain time.
Kevin Desmond.
No, Stephen
outgoing
Quinn.
CEO of TransLink. How are you? What a coincidence.
It's just an amazing. How could that have happened?
Kevin Desmond, you and I sat on a bus 5 years ago, stood on a bus 5 years ago. Reflecting back on your 5 years, what stands out?
Well, what stands out is how fast it's gone and how much we've accomplished in that period of time. I mostly like to talk about our ridership growth. We led North America for 4 straight years, 20% ridership growth through the end of 2019. And you're focused on all the right things, and that sets up the environment to grow transit ridership and market share. And we did that. And it's a virtuous cycle.
What has been your biggest frustration in your time on the job?
If I had a frustration, I wish we had rail under contract and under construction in Surrey by now. Because when I started this job, working with Mayor Hepner and the people in Surrey, we got to get light rail going. We got to get light rail going. We want to transform 104th and King George. Push, 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 push. An election, a change. Then we moved to Surrey to SkyTrain really fast. And I'm proud of how fast we moved with the election and Mayor McCallum and his slate. And then we were ready to go last summer. COVID happened. And once again, it gets put kind of on ice. So if I had any frustration on an unfinished piece of business, it's I really wish, just like Broadway subways are under construction, we would be out digging those tracks and building the guideway in Surrey right now. The people in Surrey and Langley, south of Fraser, they deserve more rail.
After 5 years on the job, what kind of shape are you leaving TransLink in then?
Well, I wish the things that we had planned at the beginning of last year were done. Because I could have left feeling, hey, I got it all done. All the pieces that we had laid in place in the previous years, tie it on a bow. Guys, I'm leaving you in a good place for my successor. Take it to the next level. That's going to get delayed now. So that's where I kind of wish I were leaving it with those bows tied. But we have a great working relationship with the province. They want us to succeed. And they'll find a way to succeed after I leave.
And what advice would you pass on to the new CEO of TransLink?
Stay focused on the customer, stay focused on engagement, stay focused on partnerships. And if you stay focused on those 3 areas, I think good things will happen.
Kevin Desmond, thank you. It's really great to talk with you, and good luck.
Coming up, from rising sea temperatures to human noise, how does our marine life stand a chance?
6:43, a live look at downtown Vancouver on this Thursday night. Well, back to the kind of weather today we're more accustomed to in February on the South Coast, and it's pretty much rinse and repeat for tomorrow. But what about the weekend? Johanna's forecast is next.
Unlike many small businesses during the pandemic, the flower industry is blooming.
We get a lot of customers calling because they can't see their friends or their loved ones for holidays, and they want to reach out.
As February 14th approaches, a seed of worry has taken root.
Fresh product has definitely been harder to come by. It's hard to remain consistent and deliver the same services to your customers.
The flowers actually come over on passenger flights into Miami and then get distributed from North America from that one port. So if there's no flights going into Miami, we can't be absolutely certain that we're going to get our flowers.
As a result, some shops, like this one in Cordes, are capping orders, encouraging customers to book in advance and think beyond roses.
A lot of the flowers in here are locally grown by greenhouses in Niagara and St. Catharines. So like the lilies, the gerbras, the statice, just a beautiful combination of flowers is a great option.
At today's Ontario Growers Auction in Mississauga, most of the stock of locally farmed flowers was gone within an hour. What's left is sold online.
They only can grow so much. So if the demand is high and the supply is about the same as last year, then yeah, there is so to speak a shortage.
It appears flexibility is key this Valentine's Day.
There's so many more different flowers available. Be creative.
Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
One of the big challenges of the 21st century will be to slow down, to breathe a bit. Cité Mémoire, yes, it's about the history of Montreal, which is the history in the last 400 years, but as well, it's a project that is there to bring a bit of poetry in the city.
And the spirit of these people that build this city, that dream this city, is in the walls. So for us is, how can we make these walls whisper?
And Robinson hits the ball. Look at that ball go! Looks like a home run! Jackie Robinson's running like a leopard. He's a great hitter, Raymond. He's past first base.
What I like when I see, those people in the street, they totally forget they are in street.
If the old project would do just that, raise the chin of people, it's enough. For me, it's enough.
Okay, from plastic junk in the water to rising sea temperatures, we know that human impact on our oceans is profound.
Now, after analyzing more than 40 years worth of data, scientists say we're also making way too much noise for marine life. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe has more on that. She joins us live. Jo, what damage is all of this doing?
Yeah, I think those of us on the West Coast have a pretty good understanding at this point that there is a negative impact from ships and our whales. I mean, we have a task force designed to create regulations that are working. But this study, this comprehensive study, was really about looking at the big picture. And I was even surprised to learn the breadth and the scope that human noise is impacting so many different mammals and marine life than I realized, not just the mammals. We spoke to one of the co-authors from the University of Victoria about why this is so much more pervasive than we realize. Take a listen.
humans don't hear very well. So we've assumed that the ocean is silent for the most part. But it turns out that it isn't. And the reason it isn't is because noise or sound travels very far in the water, much further than light or much further than chemical signals. And so, in fact, if you had to pick one way to communicate underwater, sound may be the best one.
So this was published today in the Journal of Science, and you can see on the left a range of different marine animals, everything from the big ones, the whales and the orcas and the seals on the right, all the way down to everything from jellyfish to crabs to fish to even clams. And all of them have developed sophisticated receptors to receive noise on frequencies that we don't even think about. And you can see on the right all of those different sources of noise pollution. It's the ships, but it's also noise from bridge traffic, from drilling, from airplanes, even recreational activities like scuba diving. And those impacts range from changing behaviors, you know, the inability to communicate and navigate, the impacts to brain chemistry. Cortisol levels and stress levels are shortening and even killing off some animals. And we're also seeing a change in reproductive rates. So Anita and Mike, a really big study being put out there today.
For sure, Joe. So, I mean, what solutions are the authors proposing? I mean, is there a way for people and marine life to coexist?
There is. And the good thing about noise pollution is that you can turn it off. Take a listen to the author again about why there are solutions.
We are suggesting that noise should be up there with other polluters and other sources of pollution. What's different about sound, if you think about it, is that as soon as you turn off the source of sound, the polluter's gone.
So hopefully in the future, there will be more policy and more regulations that extend throughout the entire world. And I'll be following this story closely, and I will definitely keep you posted. As I said, looking at gorgeous pictures of us on the West Coast, we know this story well. Let me take you to the forecast, also coming to us from the ocean. This stream of moisture that was our story today will continue through tomorrow morning as drizzle, but look as that low sinks. We actually get a nice break through Friday. One more little system sliding down for Friday night into Saturday before we get a bit of a break as we head into Sunday and early next week. A big cool down coming. Quick look at the provincial forecast. Still looking at a lot of sunshine for interior sections. Prince Rupert, you've got that rain and some snow for places like Terrace and Stewart. And even Kelowna, you could get a couple centimeters of snow through the first half of your day before getting into that sunshine. Hoping for the sunshine on our end in the afternoon. Saturday does look rainy, and then look at that cool down coming for Sunday and into early next week. We are overdue for a long stretch of sunny and cool weather. And I think we can make that happen beginning Sunday. I'll keep you posted.
Mike's making faces. He's excited.
I can see his smile. I can see it.
Thanks, Joe. After the break, we'll introduce you to an up-and-coming poet. She's 13 years old, but her rhymes about Black pride have a message for every age group and every community.
It's been around, just that we didn't know.
Originally, it was secretive.
What the heck did you just do? Because I want to learn this.
My name is Norman Suanico from the Philippines.
My name is Gilbert LaFantasy. We're in Red Deer, Alberta. This is where I had my school for the last 14 years.
The unique part of the Filipino martial arts is that this art is geared for combat. No? Filipino martial arts started when long before the Spaniards came to the Philippines. Philippines was composed of several tribes, and each tribe has its own martial arts. The Philippines is composed of more than 1,000 islands. That's why there's the difference between each other. Art was developed through wars between tribes.
Haribon Dumug is our system of grappling. A Dumug is the grappling, wrestling. It was all devised from the way of the blade. Our striking, our grappling, our footwork, everything comes from the blade.
With a knife, our first target is the nearest target, the hand, no? Or the wrist. We call that defanging the stake by cutting his weapon hand. Only later on, when they made it as a sport, no? By using this stick instead of sword, that's the time they made it commercial, because it is safer than the blade.
It's not as big as karate that I'm hoping one day will be, but it's growing. Like Cobra Kai came out, so now people are more, oh, let's try karate again. I mean, in my days, I think it was in the 80s when the ninja movies came out, everybody wanted to do ninjutsu. Everybody was a ninja.
It was not commercialized. It was not taught in a gym. It is, if you want to learn it, you go to the master and you have a private lesson.
I was surprised at the beginning when I started training this. I thought, God, all the Filipinos would be doing this, right? But now they're starting to, really notice how important it is.
I have a confession to make. I'm not sure who I am. I'm 19, and I'm half Indigenous and half white. My name is Jeremy Ratt. Pieces is a CBC British Columbia original podcast where I go on a journey to discover who I am and where I belong. There's racist stereotypes, cultural appropriation, relationships, acceptance. Pieces, arriving February 18th. Subscribe today.
Provinces across Canada are celebrating Black History Month.
In Nova Scotia, a young poet kicked off the month with a performance beyond her years.
As Elizabeth Chu found out, inspiration for her read came from another poet who wowed the world at the U.S. inauguration.
On the shoulders of our ancestors we stand, binding together as communities of African descent. This is where we've lived, learned, and listened. Every tongue counted, every story sacred. We've gone through pain, though we speak our own healing.
Your poem is called Together We Stand. What does that mean to you?
It means that we all stand together as Black people, as African Nova Scotians, as other races, as other communities, as other people, that we all stand together and we're all walking forward. But you all should know we don't give up easily. They tried to take us out of history, but in spite of rejection, we strive for perfection. Because we believe in resilience. We believe in survival, the ability to rise from the dust and emerge like the dawn of a new day.
Did it take you long to write? Were you drawing on your own experiences as a Black girl growing up in Nova Scotia?
I did draw on some of my own experiences as a Black girl and going through like my life as I am. And research also really helped me to form my thoughts and form my words. And while writing it, I also looked at videos related to spoken word poetry, related to Africville, related to Nova Scotia, so that I could also get more ideas of where the history comes from.
A skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president.
I also watched Amanda Gorman's video on YouTube, and that also inspired me.
What do you hope people will take away from your poem?
I hope that people will like the poem. I hope that it will also make Black people proud, because Black people have overcome a lot through history and they're still overcoming things today. And I also hope that it's also a way for other people too to learn about the experiences of Black people in Nova Scotia and all over. And I just hope that it makes them proud. In spite of rejection, we strive for perfection, because we believe in resurrection, the ability to rise from the dust and emerge like the dawn of a new day. From Halifax to North Preston to East Preston to Hammonds Plains to Weymouth Falls to Acaciaville to Truro and all the way to Sydney. Together we stand. We are the iron nails nailed into the roots of this country. This country is just as much ours as it is yours. And together we stand.
Love that. Some really powerful stories coming out of Black History Month, and she is wise beyond her years, for sure.
And the underlying maritime theme in there, nice to see. And so much information from the speech at the Capitol. Sure. Okay, we are just about out of time. Thanks for watching tonight. You can always watch our newscasts online at cbc.ca/BC.
Dan Burrett, of course, here at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Have a good night.
Good night.